We talking about sports, get ball.
What it do, baby? Yeah.
Welcome back, you number one podcast listeners, to another edition of Prem Brulee. I'm your host, Premal Bot, and I am joined by my big bro, Vish. He's back again.
Yo, what up? Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. Happy to have you back. We got a lot to get to. But first, new news out the gate is we got to get to a sponsor again. So,
what it do, baby? Yeah.
Yo,
without further ado, a message from our sponsor. This episode of the Prem Brulee podcast is brought to you by Urban Exterior Co. For all your roofing, siding, and gutter needs, please visit urbanexteriorco.com. That's urbanexteriorco.com. Shout out my dude Austin at Urban Exterior. Number one roofing, siding, and gutter company for the number one podcast in your headphones. We moving on up. We got merch now and hats, sponsors. You know the vibes, number one podcast listeners. You shouldn't expect anything else.
From the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody.
We're building bigger and better in 2021.
I love it. It's and hopefully the number one podcast listeners, if you skipped the sponsor like I usually do on my podcast, go back, rewind it, and give Austin a huge shout out. There you go.
Yeah, my guy Austin. It's a good dude. All right. Without further ado, let's get going on Yeah Fam or Nah. And first up, Vish, I wanted to get your take on the NBA All-Star air quote weekend in Atlanta. So obviously there were limited fans, seemed to be mostly family. Everything was on one day with most events before the game, and then they saved the slam dunk contest during halftime. Team LeBron beat Team Durant 170 to 150 on a half-court three-pointer from Damian Lillard. Worth noting, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons were out due to COVID-19 contact tracing. That I think that news broke like the morning of the All-Star game. And then injured players that did not compete included names like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Anthony Davis. So, all that being said, yeah, fam or nah to this NBA All-Star day or weekend, whatever you call it, Vish.
So I will have to say this as a disclaimer. I was actually without internet and TV for basically the entire weekend. So it's a big nah fam. I'm zagging here on AT&T. So there was an outage from Saturday morning to Monday afternoon, which was insane. They didn't know what was going on.
Ridiculous.
I would call, didn't know. So I saw a brief thing. It seemed like I didn't miss much, except for the three-point shootout. I think it seemed like everyone enjoyed the three-point shootout because if Steph Curry's in it and our boy Mike Conley from the Bucks, go Bucks.
Go Bucks, baby.
It seems like that was something that I only missed, but I think LeBron only played like 10 minutes.
Yeah, he played barely any at all. He went into the All-Star saying, like, I'm physically there, but not mentally there, which I get. Seems like he's been playing straight through, especially teams like the Heat and Lakers, which I don't think the Heat had an All-Star, so it was solely reserved for LeBron, who's had very little. I'm even having seen it, by the way, get your shit together, AT&T. I just had something with my internet. I'm a DirecTV guy, but I have AT&T internet, and we just had to call them out. They came out pretty quick, but come on, guys. We're in 2021 here. A lot of people working from home. What do you expect them to do here? Anyway, you didn't miss much, Vish. This All-Star weekend was kind of a dud, and I think probably the players sensed it or maybe brought that vibe into it. None of them seemed too excited about it. The three-point contest was sweet. You know, we're homers with Mike Conley. He literally lost by 1 point, and they added this like Mountain Dew deep three-point zone that's worth 3 points, and it seemed like it was meant for Steph Curry. It really felt like, okay, this will definitely, as if Steph Curry wasn't the greatest shooter this game's ever seen, they added like a deep three-pointer solely made for this dude. So I was kind of salty about that. The dunk contest, yet another year of like fucked up rating. These former dunkers give these weird ass scores, like Cassius Stanley, who's a G League player but competed in the dunk contest, had the best dunk of the night. It was the first one, and they gave him a 44. If you get a chance, if you haven't seen it already, that was the dunk of the night. and they gave it a 44 and took him out of the contest right away. So, I mean, Simons won the dunk contest, Steph Curry won the three-point contest, and the skills challenge winner was Domantas Sabonis. Like, you really didn't miss much. The game, I liked the new format, but Team LeBron dominated all three. It wasn't as exciting as last year's exciting finish to that game, where it was super competitive in the fourth. Team LeBron had built up quite a bit of a lead, so it had less drama. And shout out to LeBron. He's won all 4 times they've done this format. He is clearly the best GM. They might have to force him to not pick anymore. But overall, I'm a not. It was kind of a dud. Almost would have wished, like, for player happiness, like, give them the weekend off with their families.
Yeah, for sure.
It just seemed like the more logical solution, especially with NBA claiming to be wanting to be safe with COVID.
Well,
anyway.
I think you could have easily still done the draft and had that hypothetical. And and even if it was something silly like what the Pro Bowl did with, you know, everyone taking turns playing Madden, which seems silly, but 2K is such a huge part of the NBA culture, I think, that would have been really cool just to see some of those players hop on. And we already know LeBron plays 2K, and a lot of those players do anyway. So I think that would have been a sweet thing to actually do, and actually give some of the players some time off in this really crazy shortened season.
Yeah. And overall, the one part I'm a fan definitely is Mike Conley finally getting an All-Star to round out his historic resume. Even though he was a fill-in, whatever, it's cool to see him finally get an All-Star nod.
But did you hear some of the feedback on this? So some of the NBA national beat writers were saying it's probably better at this point if Mike Conley never makes an All-Star game, because he would be the best player in NBA history
to never make one.
I was like, that kind of makes sense. So he lost that, I guess, claim to fame.
I guess he did. He seemed pumped about it, at least. So, all right, we're gonna stick in the NBA before we move on to football. Obviously, the news that probably even beat out the All-Star weekend was Blake Griffin. He got bought out by the Detroit Pistons, and he chose to sign with the Brooklyn Nets after clearing waivers. I wanted to get your yeah, fam or not. Did their odds get odds to win a title? Because obviously Vegas sees them as the favorites right now, and they're playing like it heading into the All-Star break. Did their odds get better with this addition?
So I will preface this by saying I haven't seen a minute of Detroit basketball in like 5 years. So I really haven't seen Blake Griffin play.
Nobody has.
And I don't even think the city of Detroit has, even though now they're downtown, which is crazy, and not in the outskirts of it. So now we're digressing. Either way, I don't think it changes their odds. I still think they're favorites. If Blake Griffin kind of returns to any form that he was with the Clippers, that's great. But if he hasn't dunked in like 2 years, you know something has fallen off. And I don't even know where minutes lie. I mean, I've seen a good amount of Nets games at least, and they seem to have some good depth and what that looks like. They don't need scoring. They don't need that. Maybe they have a lot more pick and roll action, especially when Durant returns. But for the most part, I don't think it really changes anything or shifts it one way or the other. It'll just be a matter of seeing if Blake can actually be productive on that team. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm a nod of this increase in their chances. Like, I don't think Blake Griffin is the same he was. He doesn't move the needle to like, oh, this is the addition they needed, because his game is totally different. Like you said, he shoots a lot more threes. He's not the high flyer he once was. So I just feel like it's a nice addition. Obviously, you're not going to not want Blake Griffin on your team. I see his role being kind of like a bench scorer. They did lose for all that they gained from James Harden. They lost some bench production by losing someone like Karis LeVert and all that. So Blake Griffin adds scoring off the bench, gives people a rest. You could put either Kyrie or James Harden just with Blake Griffin, and they can run a pick and roll and give the other two a rest. I think it adds some versatility to their already amazing team. So, but I don't think ultimately when you look at their odds, it's about their big three. It is not about anyone else around them. So I don't think their odds increased by it, but it's a nice addition, and all this to stop one LeBron James.
Well, and I think at that same breath, it would be the same impact as if the Nets re-signed Keith Van Horn to their squad.
Keith Van Horn, baby. Kendall Gill, maybe. Bring Kendall Gill back.
Hey, rest in
Gary
peace.
Kittles.
Rest in peace, Mr. Gill. Rest in peace.
What about Gary Kittles? What's he doing?
Oh, I don't know what Gary Kittles is doing. There's some good names for the Nets. They need to bring back those uniforms, too.
These are our basketball card history.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now that we kind of put a little bit of a bow on the NBA, let's move over to the NFL because obviously they're wheeling and dealing at this point in time. The franchise tags are coming out, all this stuff. But the main first name that went off the board was someone personal to you, or maybe not for long, J.J. Watt, after being bought out by the Texans, or whatever they decided to do. I think bought out or but J.J. Watt surprised everyone by choosing to sign with the Arizona Cardinals. So before we get into J.J. Watt, I figured it was worth noting the NFL cap numbers. So anytime we're talking about these numbers, keep this in mind. The cap numbers for this year were released finally, and this year every team will have a salary cap of $182.5 million. Sounds like a bunch, right? But that is down from $198.2 million last year. So this $15.7 million less for this year is pretty substantial. There are going to be a lot of cuts that teams don't want to make. So obviously, number one podcast listeners will be talking about them in each of our episodes. But worth noting that these are the new numbers. They went down, obviously, with COVID and limited fans. There was just less money to go around. So I think the Players Association and NFL had agreed that it wouldn't go below $175 million. So they finally settled on a 182.5, which is substantially less. Anyway, that's all worth noting with all these moves that are happening, and some of which we're going to discuss today on this episode. For J.J. Watt's numbers, he signed a 2-year, $31 million deal with $23 million guaranteed. Will he be an impact for the Cardinals? Just give me your overall yeah, fam or not of this move, Vish.
It's a big yeah, fam. I think the Cardinals had a huge, swing, and let's see if it's a miss or if it's knocking out of the park or even if it's like a double. They've got their money's worth. I think at the end of the day, J.J. Watt means a shit ton for the Houston Texans organization, the city of Houston. I think even in his introductory press conference, it was worth noting that he really thanked the city of Houston instead of thanking the Texans and what he's going to miss the most. And so it really kind of reinforces a topic that I don't want to revisit right now around Deshaun Watson. But either way, a huge locker room presence, a great community presence, and I think it's just going to push their young players a little bit further. The Cardinals' defense actually last year was one of their better sides of the ball, and it was actually their offense that shit the bed, and so it puts a lot more pressure on Kyler Murray and that offense to actually follow through and make sure that, hey, we have a great team on paper, but let's see if it actually follows in a big division, I think, too, in a really tough division. But he really adds that depth in terms of that.
Honestly, this is another move. I know it's not on the offensive side of the ball, but this roster really is rounding out with some big-name players in Arizona. You're running out of excuses if you're Cliff Kingsbury and if you're Kyler Murray.
Yep.
You have all these weapons around you. You got to do better than 500 and missing the playoffs in the last week of the season. Just no excuse for it. I think this is a great deal for all parties. Yes, it's a lot of money, but J.J. Watt still has years left in the tank, some good years, and you're limiting the amount this contract is worth. So at most it's 2 years, and then if he really doesn't live up to it, then you're not on the hook for too much. I think it's a win-win. It's good for JJ because he gets a nice chunk of change still. And you pointed out they have a great roster, and you're pairing him with Chandler Jones, which is quite the defensive line. So, yeah, running out of excuses in Arizona. I know they're in a tough division. That got tougher with Matthew Stafford now on the Rams, and we don't know what's going to happen with the Seahawks, all that stuff. We don't know what's going to happen with the Niners either, but there are no excuses anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and Watt has been super productive as well. If you as a Texans fan, I follow a lot of the beat writers, and if you watch some of the film that they put out on J.J. Watt, teams are running away from him still. As injury prone as he's been the last couple years and what that looks like, he's still a presence, not just on the pass rush, but the run defense as well. And that will be important for the Cardinals moving forward. So for them, it's weird that the Texans weren't just like, hey, where do you want to go? We'll send you there. And they released him with nothing. They could have got like a third rounder, fourth rounder at the very least. And it's silly. We're not talking about that right now, though.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it happen with like the Patriots getting Trent Brown from the Raiders. Trent Brown reworked a deal, so they could have done the same thing and gotten some for it. But I know we're preaching to the choir here. Let's move on to the other big signing of this this offseason so far, this young offseason so far.
It's my quarterback.
Dak Prescott signed a 4-year, $160 million deal with $126 million guaranteed. A couple of contract notes. He has a $66 million signing bonus. Imagine getting that many zeros behind a number just for putting your signature on a piece of paper. He has a $9 million base salary. This is all in year one. So in year one of this contract, he will earn $75 million. Wow. Funny enough, whoever tells you they understand cap numbers, they probably don't, because funny enough, this big figure of $75 million in year one actually brings Dak's cap number down to $25.5 million, which is 12.2 less than he would have been if he played under the franchise tag. Have no idea how that works out. I have some idea, but I won't bore you guys with the details. But anyone who claims to know cap numbers doesn't know what they're talking about. The other thing that was kind of missed amongst this, this is definitely a home run for Dak. Obviously, no other way to look at it. But the deal is actually a 6-year deal that voids to 4 years. The reason that is like that is because it allows for the team, the Cowboys, to spread out Dak's cap hit over time. So it leaves them more room to make some moves. Dak is now the second highest paid player if you go by average annual salary. He's below Patrick Mahomes at $45 million per year and just above Deshaun Watson, who's earning $39 million per year. Russell Wilson is fourth on that list at $35 million per year. Dak also has a no trade clause and a no franchise tag clause. And then a few other things before we get our takes here. Those wondering about cap space, I know we talked about the figure now. The Cowboys can and likely will create roughly $36 million more in cap space by restructuring the contracts of DeMarcus Lawrence, Amari Cooper, and Zach Martin. So those with that narrative about Dak costing or he should have taken less or whatever for the team, mind your own fucking business.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Okay. All that being said, yeah, fam or nah, I'm going to start this one out just so I can get it off my chest here. And then I'll get your take here, Vish. I am a yeah fam for this. I cannot stress this enough. Yeah fam. Good for Dak, and fuck the Jones family for dragging this out and playing themselves. We've literally talked about this for 2 or 3 goddamn years. And just fucking think about this damn family if they would have signed Dak when Carson Wentz and Jared Goff's bum asses signed their contracts. Don't you dare fucking blame Dak for getting all the money he deserves. It was the Jones family who fucking played themselves, and they deserve to suffer. I'm glad Dak got all the fucking money he deserves. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I don't give a fuck what happens to the rest of this team. They did everything ass backwards. They didn't pay him first. They paid everyone else. And now you want Dak to take less money for all these other people? No. That's not how it fucking works. He's the only reason the Cowboys have been halfway decent. You saw what happened when he was off the field. So, good for fucking Dak. I'm a yeah fan for this. And yes, they're going to create space and all that stuff. They better, because they fucked it up otherwise. And if everything is fucked up because they had to sign Dak to this contract, it serves them fucking right. I've already accepted the fact that I will not be happy rooting for this fucking team as long as this Jones family runs it. So, what does it fucking matter to me? Fuck them. They played themselves. They deserve this. And now Dak gets to be a free agent. He gets everything he wanted. He won this hands down. There's not an ounce of this that supports the Jones family. They didn't win a single ounce of this besides the fact that they get to keep a franchise quarterback. They did everything wrong. Dak did everything right. He bet on himself. His price went up even though he got injured. I was so worried about that. His price went up. He got everything he wanted, a shorter deal. He's going to be a free agent again at age 31, and good for him. He really bet on himself, and he fucking won, and that's a good lesson for any of us. A little early, too much sense. Be like Dak. Bet on your fucking self.
There's not much for me to add because you said it all. Everything that, even as a non-Cowboys fan, Dak really bet on himself, like you just said, and got paid for it. And in a very mutually beneficial thing for the Cowboys as well, because they have a lower cap hit this year. They can restructure and really sign things that they really need to make a playoff push. When Dak went down last year, that was it. And the Cowboys still almost made the playoffs, right? In a shitty NFC division, but still, without Dak, without that, let's just see what happens and what they're able to do. And it's not a best kept secret, and I'm using air quotes that you all can't see, but when the new TV deal kicks in for the NFL, they're going to be able to, that cap number that you said earlier today, it's going to increase.
The 182.5.
Yeah, it's going to continue to increase. It's going to continue to climb. And it's a 4-year deal. So when Dak turns 31 in 4 years, he will be able to bet on himself again. If it's the Cowboys, great. If he's able to bring success, fine. But there's going to be plenty of other teams out there that are going to be like, hey, he's 31. Let's give him another 4 years. It's just a win-win situation all around. Good for him for signing a long-term enough deal, but short-term enough to give himself a chance for another big payday.
100%. And worth noting about that salary cap figure, you can tell that this period of time in our world, frankly, with this pandemic, impacted things because prior to this year of the cap number going down, it had increased, I think, at least 10% every year. So it's a good indication that NFL is usually making a lot of dough, but the situation that we are going on in this world didn't allow for that to happen.
And speaking of Texas, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit.
All right.
We had last week when you had Jasmine on, it was one of our more serious conversations, and it was fantastic. Yeah. Shout out to Jasmine and you for having such a wonderful conversation. So huge shout out to our sis and what she was able to bring, and relating to the sports was awesome. But let me get on my soapbox a bit. I'm sure all you number one podcast listeners out there know that my brother and I, we have grad degrees from the College of Public Health, from the Ohio State University. We're as pro public health as they get. But Texas, just has completely shit the bed over the last month. We're talking about when they had their winter storm, just not being able to sustain that power grid around heat, electricity. Millions were without that for days. And there's still plenty of individuals, hundreds of thousands, that have shitty water. I mean, what are you talking about? And then the governor, a few days ago, announces, we're going to reopen Texas. And that's probably what I think he sounds like, even though I've never heard an ounce of him, because I'm not going to give him the side of day. Instead of reopening right now, just wait a few months. Fucking wait. We're almost there. People are almost vaccinated. Holy crap. And probably a few hours ago, the Texas Rangers, they just announced, I don't know if you saw this, that they're going to allow a full capacity stadium. The Texas fucking Rangers. And there are a garbage team with a garbage stadium.
Luckily they blow. They probably won't fill out the seats anyway.
I mean, just a joke. And I just hope that our family that's out there, they just stay safe, clear of all this. It's just so silly. So sorry and thanks for allowing me to get some microphone therapy on it. But
yeah, great point. Couldn't have said it better myself. They're playing themselves, which is a perfect segue because you already know what time it is. Hit that intro, baby.
I'm petty as hell. And I'm super petty.
Here we
Petty Le Pew.
go.
That's right, you number one podcast listeners. It is time for You Played Yourself. And first up on You Played Yourself, we had to start with this dude, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He deserves this probably more than anyone in the recent history. So, Zlatan, in case you missed it amongst all this going on in the sports world, he said the following, quote, "I don't like when people, when they have some kind of status and they do politics at the same time as what they are doing," end quote. So, Zlatan Ibrahimovic said this about LeBron James and other high-profile athletes, essentially telling them to stick to sports. Yeah. What you're hearing, yeah, I understand 100%. You're shaking your head. I can sense it through the number one podcast listener headphones. So, in response to that, LeBron, obviously he was going to be asked about it. He said, quote, he was the same guy who said when he was back in Sweden, because his last name wasn't a certain last name, that he felt that there was some racism going on when he was out on the pitch. James continued, "I speak from a very educated mind, so I'm kind of the wrong guy to actually go at because I do my homework," end quote.
Hell yeah.
You're damn fucking right. So, regarding what James brought up, Ibrahimovic a few years ago said he was subject to undercover racism in his native Sweden because his Bosnian roots give him a last name that doesn't sound traditionally Swedish. I guess Ibrahimovic isn't common to Swedish last names, and that was what he felt was leading to discrimination. So, in response to all this backlash that you are no doubt feeling and why, as you listen to this, because why the fuck would anyone have to stick to sports? Like the fucking gall to claim that someone needs to do that. Anyway, when asked to clarify his point, Ibrahimovic doubled down. He said, quote, "Athletes unite the world, politics divide it. Our role is to unite the world by doing what we do best. Athletes should be athletes and politicians should do politics," end quote. Yeah, in case I didn't explicitly say it, yeah, go ahead and fuck off with this take, Zlatan. We're talking about the dude that talks in third person, and we give a shit about what he thinks, and he's telling people to stick to sports. This is who we're fucking listening to here?
So can
Stick
I ask
to fucking sports?
Can I ask a clarifying question? Did LeBron James, to unbeknownst to many of us, run for an elected office? No, he's fucking speaking his mind like many of us do. It's nothing different. He just has microphones in front of us. And we've gone over this in our pro LeBron plugs. If you didn't know by now, Prem Brulee is a pro LeBron podcast.
You're damn right. LeGod James, baby. Don't ever get it twisted.
And to be honest, I've covered this and I won't spend too much time because Zlatan does not deserve it. But I'm glad LeBron didn't stick to sports. I'm glad he educated himself. I'm glad he gives back to the community because of what he's doing with I Promise School and every other thing that he's done is incredible. It's beyond what any athlete actually is required to do. He just goes above and beyond. And so I'm glad he hasn't stuck to sports, and I'm glad he stood up for himself that, hey, when I talk, I actually understand what I'm going on. And this is all with the caveat of whatever happened in China a couple years ago. I know that was something that LeBron wishes he probably would have educated himself on before he chatted.
Right. Yeah, that was like a hiccup in... That is a very good point. The situation in China that had to do with free speech and them basically censoring NBA because of how they felt that was perceived. I think it started with Daryl Morey, who was then part of the Houston Rockets front office, all that stuff. LeBron was essentially protecting his money in that instance, which I get was totally wrong. There's no excuse for that. If you're going to be outspoken, be outspoken. But sticking to sports, no, we're not fucking doing that. We're not fucking for that. If you don't want to talk about it, then don't. If you're Zlatan, like, continue talking in third person or whatever people find fucking endearing. But those athletes using their platform for good, like, what are we really talking about here? You want to call them out? Give me a fucking break. Speaking of give me a fucking break, Myers Leonard, you fucking played yourself. Myers Leonard, a center for the Miami Heat, in case you are not aware, he used a anti-Semitic slur during a video game live stream. You can look up what he said. I'm not going to give the word the time of the day. I don't believe in using that type of hate speech or even explaining what he said. You can find it. You can find his apology, all of that stuff. He posted an apology and basically outlined there's no excuse for it, but he didn't know the meaning of what he was saying. You know, I'm going to get into this here. So, there's just no place for this. There's no excuse for it. In the video, if you've watched it or if you haven't, You can find it online, I'm sure, on Twitter somewhere. Leonard even paused before rattling the slur off. So he basically like gathered his thoughts to say it. So whether he knew it or not, we don't rationalize that type of behavior. If you don't know what it means, how are you going to fucking say it? I'm not going to say a word that I don't know and pretend I fucking know what it means then. If you want to claim ignorance, like, you have no basis for that. There's no excuse to use this type of language. And you can't claim ignorance. In his apology, he said it's not an excuse, but still, we're not condoning any of this bullshit. You got something to add to this?
Yeah.
Stupid hate speech.
Look, the way...
Myers Leonard... real quick. Myers Leonard, the Heat put him on indefinite leave, which is like also bullshit. Like, what do you need to evaluate at this point? And the NBA is like, we're reviewing the video. It's like a 30-second video. Like, what are we talking about here? Anyway, that's the status of things. I think Myers Leonard is hurt right now, so he wasn't even with the team anyway, but that's the update on the situation.
Yeah, it just... The way he rattled it off, you know, I watched an edited version of the video, and you can read in between the lines of what he said. Like, he's been using this word pretty regularly, and it's a weird, like, not to like demean any sort of racial slur or anything, but like to use that anti-Semitic slur, you kind of have to have heard it somewhere and is part of your vocabulary. So fuck this guy with 1,000 fucks. You know, like, what an asshole. And the other part of this. And I'm sure this tweet has probably been surfacing around as of late. During the bubble last year, he was the only Heat player and among the very few that actually stood up as their teammates kneeled. And that symbolic thing was probably where it could have stopped. No, he fucking tweeted, "I stand." And he went on this gigantic rant of why he stands. And everything he listed actually would go the opposite of like, no, you should actually be kneeling with your quote unquote brothers and teammates. I mean, he is just a crock of holy shit or whatever it is. If he's not cut by the end of the weekends, like, there's something seriously wrong with the Miami Heat. Yeah. Sorry, Myers. Like, this is the end of your NBA career and perhaps your career in general.
Ridiculous. Okay. No easy way to transition away from that, but we're gonna try. Switch over to football. We're gonna try it, yeah. Okay, the next you played yourself goes to this notion that due to Dak Prescott signing this deal, there's no more excuses. He should bring the team a Super Bowl. Okay, let's fucking break this down here. Yes, obviously a Super Bowl is a fucking goal. Like, no shit, Sherlock. But since when is one player carrying a team to a title in football? Show me the example of a QB who had no talent around him and pulled a LeBron James with the Cavs in 2007 or LeBron James with the Cavs in 2018. That exact line of thinking died in Raymond James Stadium this past Super Bowl, when you might be able to still find a fucking imprint of Patrick Mahomes' jersey in the grass on account of his starting tackles being out. Give it a fucking rest with this. Yes, the expectations are a little higher. They always were. He's quarterback of America's team and the second highest paid player. Don't you think he fucking knows that already? Like, it doesn't automatically make this Super Bowl or bust. If Dak was healthy last year with that sorry-ass offensive line and sorry-ass defense, are you all of a sudden thinking, oh, we should have been this far in the playoffs because he was getting paid a certain amount? No. You can only go so far with unique quarterback talent. And show me the fucking example of a quarterback that did it by themselves. I'll wait. Like, you won't be able to find it because anyone you point to had weapons around him. You want to look Cowboys examples? Yeah, Troy Aikman carried his entire Cowboys teams in the 90s to the Super Bowl. Forget Emmitt Smith, all-time leading rusher, Michael Irvin, Hall of Famer. Forget all those names and that big-ass offensive line. Forget that. Steve Young, he didn't have any receivers to throw to, am I right? Fuck Jerry Rice. Like, what are we talking about here? Keep his name out your fucking mouth. If not, talk about all the other quarterbacks that way. You hear all this talk about Carson Wentz, all the drama he threw in Philadelphia. Okay, now he's on a new team. Do we hear Super Bowl expectations for him all of a sudden? He's still getting paid the same amount. Give it a rest.
Yeah, I think the only thing I disagree is when you said America's team. I don't know if that's necessarily still true around the Cowboys, but we won't go down that mode right now.
Just so you know, I'm probably gonna bleep that out as if you said a cuss word.
Hey, that's fine. You can bleep all you want. America's team, air quotes, quote unquote,
Is the Dallas Cowboys.
It's Dallas Cowboys, but there is America's team. Everyone either hates or loves teams, and that's just how it is. Look, you're absolutely right. If you have an above average QB, and that's what Dak Prescott is, pay him. It doesn't matter. Not every team is going to win the Super Bowl. You just have to find the luck of the draw and actually just hit the gold, right? And that's ultimately what it comes down to. You know, I'm glad Dak got paid, even coming off a brutal injury. He bet on himself, like you said earlier, and it also helps set up for the other two quarterbacks that will get paid here in a little bit, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. They're going to be just swimming in that Scrooge McDuck gold coin, the DuckTales opening. You've all seen it. You all can image it. That's exactly what it's going to be. And good for that. I mean, the owners have a lot of money. They own an NFL team by choice. So if they got to pay the players, pay the players.
It's a great point. Yeah, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen will be next up, and then we'll see what kind of numbers they draw and what people have to say about them. Last up on You Played Yourself, we got to talk NFL draft here. It is now under 50 days until the NFL draft, which is very exciting for us people who've had a longer offseason than most, pointing at myself here. So, as NFL draft season is quickly approaching, let me give you a preliminary You Played Yourself if you fall for certain things. This is just kind of a warning shot for all of you. So we've now entered the portion of the NFL draft season where we hear about random non-football factors scouts try to tell us to fall in and out of love with prospects, throw up smoke screens. I'm assuming for teams, I'm guessing they work with teams to do this, to put stories out there. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but some of these definitely feel that way. So one example I have is, at one point, Todd McShay noted on Get Up on ESPN that BYU quarterback Zach Wilson was not a team captain. Players on BYU voted for 8 captains of the 2020 season, 4 offense, 4 defense, and Wilson was somehow not one of them. He was part of the leadership council, but not a captain, and they wondered if that was a red flag. I mean, really, guys? Like, come the fuck on here. Let's keep it to football here, and not all these other stupid-ass factors, okay? Okay, here's my next warning. And I think we kind of covered this the last time I was on with Thomas when I got his preliminary rankings. We have some teams that claim that they have Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence in their quarterback rankings. Fam, do not trust any fucking draft rankings where Trevor Lawrence is not the top quarterback on their big board. Just don't trust it. It's not correct. Stop overthinking shit and trying to find things. Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback. Along those same lines, if we want to go by position, you find any ranking that doesn't have Penei Sewell as the top offensive tackle. Yes, I'm aware Rashawn Slater is really good. Penei Sewell's better. He should be the top tackle. If you have anyone getting cute, ignore that fucking ranking. Next up, Kyle Pitts not being the top tight end, fucking skip, close out of that link. You don't need it. Kyle Pitts might be more of a receiver, but he is classified as a tight end, and he is a damn good weapon. Okay. Last position group, but he might not be super early in the draft. We'll see. At running back, if you see any position ranking that doesn't have Najee Harris from Alabama as the top running back on their list, fucking skip it. It's not that complicated. Trust your eyeballs, okay? Don't try to find things that are not on tape or anywhere, okay? They're grabbing shit out of thin air. If you see a ranking that looks fucked up, don't waste your time with it. Let's move on to who you got and what you feeling. And a little quick recap. Obviously, last episode was a little different, so we didn't have picks then. This is back from our typical episode format like we're doing now, Vish. Yep. Last time, Thomas and I talked about where J.J. Watt would end up, and I don't think anyone predicted the Cardinals, so no one had that right. It was mostly like Browns, Packers, Steelers, Bills, maybe like a contender like the Buccaneers. Thomas did have a long shot probability of the Bears. I guess he kind of had the right idea of like, oh, a team no one's talking about, but he ended up on the Cardinals. We talked about our Team Snacks power ranking. Obviously, this started last year. You and I did a Team Snacks. I think it was Team Snacks 2. This was Team Snacks 3 episode.
Yeah.
And you even got some love from there. I'll let you get to that. But I went with my power rankings being chicken wings being number 1 for me easily. I'm a chips and dip guy because Steph, my wife, threw down a whole bunch of dips for Super Bowl, including dessert dips. And then I'm a big pizza guy. And then my nostalgic pick, which you can relate to, having
for sure.
been raised in the same house, was pinwheels. Grew up going to Super Bowl parties with pinwheels there, and we love those things. And then to drink, I'm a pop/soda person. So Thomas went with some. He also went with wings. He threw a Dark Horse Snyder's honey mustard pretzel bites, which are bomb.
Yeah, they are.
He likes French fries, also, which is random. He acknowledged, but I like the Dark Horse picks. What do you got here?
Yeah, this is tough because I love wings. Don't get me wrong, but if you're eating wings and or pizza as a fucking snack, big kudos to you. I usually use those as meals.
It's a lifestyle, baby.
Hey, I get it's a lifestyle, and I'm not talking about like kudos in terms of the granola bar from way back when. I don't even know if they still
Wow.
make it. Yeah, it's the M&M
That's a
kudos
throwback.
kind though.
Those couldn't have been healthy, by the way. We carried those in our house. They're like kudos, and it was like a half candy bar.
Yeah, and the ones with M&Ms were the best ones, I think, easily by far. The mini M&Ms, whatever. I think everyone knows I'm a chips and dip guy. Even when we do like little icebreakers for work or community related, whatever it is, chips and dip's my favorite food. It's so versatile, whatever it is. So, and I know I got some love a few years ago. I randomly tweeted something, and Frito-Lay sponsored me for like one Super Bowl, and they sent me like a care package. So that was pretty bomb. I know we're still looking for a wing sponsor. Cough, roosters, cough, roosters, cough, roosters.
Where you at?
Do, baby.
Yeah. The other thing that I'll add, I love cashews. They have to be salted. Cashews are just an awesome snack. Kind of fill you up for the time being. I know we're also team goldfish here. And frankly, anything with cheese on it, I will fucking inhale. I love cheese. Cheese is so amazing. Nacho cheese, cheddar cheese, Parmesan cheese. You can talk about any sort of cheese, I am your man. And that also goes in with chips and dip. So cheese is like 1, 2, and 3 on my list here. And hey, if cashews were dipped in cheese, I would probably eat them too. Not gonna lie.
That's a new wave. Cheese-covered cashews is a hell of a proposition, and who do we need to get to? Planners, hit us up for a sponsor. Let's get cheese-dusted cashews.
Oh yeah. There's multiple types of cheese-covered cashews that you could have too. Like now I'm craving cashews. Now I'm craving something that might exist already. One of my good friends, which I know, Ricky, Pretty Lick Ricky.
Dad.
Yeah, Rich Dad. There you go. He always would say, if you can think about it or you've thought about it, it's already been done. And so it was just one of those ideas of whatever. So cheese cashews got to
We gotta look
exist.
They have to exist somewhere. You're right. Yeah, you have the claim, like, we'll never not have a Team Snacks episode every year because we cashed in on Team Snacks 2. You got a little sponsorship for your Super Bowl. So,
and I was just thinking about this, and I'm surprised, and shame on us for not doing this, but movie theater popcorn is easily top snack choice ever.
yes. So I think the context of this, in my defense, is like more about a Super Bowl.
Oh, okay,
Usually,
gotcha, yeah.
You and I both do this. Like we haven't even really gone into a theater, but we've literally went to the concession stands and walked out with a tub of popcorn instead.
Oh yeah. Oh.
And I've done that multiple times in this weird year. Like, I haven't seen a movie in a theater in over a year, but I have been to one just to go get popcorn.
Oh yeah, it's so good. Now I'm craving some too.
Amen. Always. All right. The other thing Thomas and I talked about were draft rankings. I was getting his take because he does a lot of scouting. So obviously I won't recap everything here, but there's more to discuss with the draft coming up shortly, so I won't bother with that. I will go over, he had a quick top 5 mock draft. He went Lawrence to Jacksonville at 1. Zach Wilson to the Jets at 2. Penei Sewell at 3 to the Dolphins. Kyle Pitts at 4 to the Falcons. And Jamar Chase at 5 to the Bengals. I went with Lawrence and Wilson 1 and 2. I went with Jamar Chase at 3 to Miami, the receiver out of LSU. Justin Fields at 4 to Atlanta. And then Penei Sewell at 5 to Cincinnati. Another thing, if you see a mock draft where the Cincinnati Bengals do not take Penei Sewell and he's still on the board at number 5, close that link. Because if Cincinnati does do that, they don't deserve anything nice. Okay, so let's get that clear. Like if you're one of those teams in the 6-7 range and like, oh, it'd be nice. I'm a Cowboys fan. It'd be nice if Penei Sewell dropped to 10. He should not fall to 10. Like, there's no scenario where he should fall to 10 unless everyone trades up for quarterbacks in like the top 9 picks. I don't know what to tell you. Like, don't believe it.
The other thing to add into this, which I'm not going to push back on Thomas too much, but Tua is a left-handed quarterback and Penei Sewell is a left tackle. To block Tua's blindside, if he's your franchise quarterback, you actually need a right tackle. So it is not super far-fetched because we don't even know if Tua is an answer in Miami, but I'm just putting that out there. Like, it would be a huge stretch for Miami to take a left tackle with a left-handed quarterback that is the presumptive starter going into next year. And again, this is all contingent on Watson and Wilson and what happens with them, but this is just as it stands right now.
Who knows? I know it's totally different to play on the other side. It's totally different footwork, so... Yep. I would imagine he'd be versatile to do that, but it's definitely worth noting. Maybe the Dolphins know something we don't, as in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes.
Could be my new favorite team. Whoop, whoop.
Could be. Yeah, you might need to...
The teal and the orange. It's a good colorway.
Yeah, it is. It is nice. Okay, this week, I wanted to get your NBA power rankings heading into the second, I guess, air quote, half of the season after the All-Star break. Give me your top 5 in your power rankings.
I think right now, if I had to rank them, I had to look this up too, just because I haven't watched as much NBA as I probably should at this point. But I would say 1, Nets, 2, probably the 76ers, then the Lakers, Jazz, Suns, in some sort of order to round out the top 5. Okay. But I think the 2 top teams would probably be in the East right now, and Joel Embiid, even though we're pro LeBron, he's been lights out this year and is obviously the MVP favorite as it stands, and would be the MVP at the halfway point.
Yeah. I have Nets 1, Lakers 2, Sixers 3, Jazz 4, Suns 5, and then Nuggets and Suns were close for that 5 spot, but I liked the addition of Chris Paul. I liked it from the start, and they seem to be doing really well with him.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that a lot of these teams, they have versatile big men, right? But Joel Embiid and the Lakers are only down because AD's out. And obviously, we'll know a little bit more about them and his injury as time goes on. Rudy Gobert with the Jazz, runner for Defensive Player of the Year. And DeAndre Ayton has played really well for the Suns. And so you have some big body teams there. And then even if you add the Nuggets, Jokic is another MVP candidate. So you're talking about some of the top 6 teams that have these big men. And so it's crazy how we went from a shooting league, the Rockets small ball, to something like this. It's kind of chaotic and how the ebbs and flows of the NBA really at front and center.
Yeah.
Pun intended there. You see what I did?
Front and center. We'll see where Andre Drummond winds up too if he gets caught out by the Cavs. Yeah. Okay. Regarding the NFL offseason, there have been franchise tag designations coming in fast and furious. I wanted to cover some of the notable players that were franchise tagged, some others that didn't end up being franchise tagged that were somewhat surprising that some people figured might happen. So a couple notable names that will reportedly be franchise tagged. The Tampa Bay Bucks chose to go with Chris Godwin as their franchise tag. They had a couple players that were probably candidates. They had Shaq Barrett and Levante David as potential franchise tag candidates. They got a very team-friendly deal out of Levante David. I think it was like 2 years, $25 million or something like that. Yeah. And then we'll see what happens with Shaq Barrett, who's obviously a tremendous asset for getting sacks. The Bears franchise tagged Allen Robinson. You had the Giants do that with Leonard Williams. A bunch of safeties got franchise tagged. The Saints, Marcus Williams, Jets, Marcus May, and Broncos, Justin Simmons. The Jaguars surprisingly tagged Cam Robinson, young offensive tackle. A couple more offensive linemen across the board. Panthers with Taylor Moton, and Washington football team with Brandon Scherf. Worth noting, Dak Prescott did get designated as a franchise tag. The reason they did that is that helps them fulfill the no franchise tag clause in his new contract. Basically, by doing this designation, once he signs his extension, in the future, he won't be able to be franchise tagged again after he's agreed to a contract. I think some names worth noting that did not receive franchise tags that were kind of iffy, and maybe some people thought they would. The Lions did not franchise tag Kenny Golladay. Same with the Packers and Aaron Jones. The Seahawks and Chris Carson. Chargers, Hunter Henry was not tagged. Steelers, Bud Dupree was not tagged. Texans, Will Fuller was not tagged. And the Titans tight end, Jonnu Smith, who definitely broke out. If you had him in fantasy, you know what we're talking about here. So, I wanted to talk about who we thought, which franchise tag or not franchise tag would be the biggest impact. So I'll go ahead and go first, and I'll get your thoughts here. My pick is Kenny Golladay right off the bat. I think Kenny Golladay is a very slept-on, great wide receiver, and he now enters a free agent pool that all of a sudden isn't as deep as we all thought. You know, Allen Robinson was tagged. Chris Godwin was tagged. Those are names that we're seeing like, oh, these are big names entering this pool. Now Kenny Golladay was already at the top of that list, and even more is going to be sought after because of other people not being available. He is a very complete wide receiver, great route runner. He makes difficult catches. He would make an immediate impact on a team that needs a new wide receiver one. I know some people don't sleep on like Detroit receivers, and they flew under the radar, but Kenny Golladay, when healthy, is very good. And this tells me that all these mock drafts having the Lions take a wide receiver at number 7, it adds more to that. They probably need someone because I think, well, with Kenny Golladay going, I think they're also going to be losing Marvin Jones. So that's their 2 top receivers. You have to think they're probably going to lean towards going receiver with their 7th overall pick. Who you got for this?
Yeah, I like the Kenny Golladay pick. If you can throw some music in there for some Kenny G, I think we should have that drop for sure. Because Kenny Golladay is super underrated. I think he was injured last year, and I think they just kind of held him out at his request so that he didn't kind of risk getting injured at the before free agency, if you will.
Kind of more the reason why I thought they were going to franchise tag.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, they really played it safe with him.
Oh, yeah. I thought so, too. But I think when they got rid of Stafford, the writing was on the wall for the Lions and their rebuild. And I don't blame them. I actually don't mind any of the tags that were there. I personally like the defensive players getting tagged. We had 3 safeties. I'm going to really pick like Marcus Williams and Justin Simmons. Marcus Williams with the Saints, and then Justin Simmons with the Broncos. Both Pro Bowl safeties for whatever that means, but Justin Simmons is an All-Pro, second-team All-Pro, I think a couple years ago as well, and they're super crucial for their teams. Their divisions are pretty rock solid. We talked a little bit about Mahomes and being in the AFC West with the Broncos and the Saints. They're in a pretty tough division in terms of offensive firepower. So having those safeties really be that quarterback on defense, if you will, to help kind of offset and figure out what that looks like. So I really like it for those 2 teams, and I think it's smart for them just to see, hey, what happens with this, and do we want that long-term deal? I think it's harder to do long-term deals with defensive players anyways, just because you can kind of refresh at each draft, and it kind of sucks for our veteran players, but for these 2 safeties, good for them.
The Marcus Williams one is very intriguing because the Saints are already in big cap issues, and then they franchise tagged him, and I think they're like that franchise tag put him another $10 million. They're over the cap by like $70 million, I think I heard, so that franchise tag was very surprising on their part. But I like those picks. I can't relate to having a really star safety, so. Also, not these non-franchise tags for running backs. It's going to it's going to be pretty tough for running backs in these markets, especially with this trend of not valuing them. So hopefully Aaron Jones and Chris Carson can get some dough their way for their own sake. Okay. Now it's time for What You Feeling. And I wanted to go first because I had to plug. I brought them up at the beginning. But these Prem Brulee hats we got out. Shout out to you, Vish, and Jackie, my sister-in-law, for inspiring these by getting... so Vish and Jackie got me a Prem Brulee podcast-themed birthday gift last year that included a hat. And ever since then, it's been kind of my vision to be able to have hats with Prem Brulee to rep the #1 podcast in your headphones on the #1 hat that you'll ever wear. And we delivered on that. Got them to close friends and family. Still got some in supply and more hopefully on the way. But I wanted to give a big shout out to you and Jackie, and then also my dude Sam Grayson for helping me get these made. So you #1 podcast listeners, this is an announcement for you. Get at me if you're sharing, reviewing, spreading the news on the #1 podcast in your headphones. I just might be sending you some fresh gear to rep. So hit me up. You know where to find me. If you're sharing these, let me know.
Yeah, I love the hats. I'm not just doing a plug because you're my little bro and I love you, but the hats are legit for sure. They are super comfortable. So even if it's a quick Instagram post, share, a Twitter, Facebook, whatever it is, plug Prem Brulee, shout us out. And the hats are just awesome. So Sam really knocked it out of the park, and great choice on your end to get that comfort level. And sometimes it's underrated to have just a already well-worn hat as a new hat right out of the box. It's rare. So get at it. One thing I'm feeling, I think I already talked about it. Our cable was down, but one thing that wasn't was the ability to play Crash Bandicoot on our PlayStation.
Wow.
So my wife Jackie and I, we played some Crash Bandicoot. We have a good system going on where she does most of the levels and really gets through it, and then at the boss time, it's just a pass and play type of method. So we make it work. So we got through a lot of Crash levels, as you can expect, since we didn't really have internet or TV to focus on. So I think that's what I'm feeling is being able to get through some few levels of Crash Bandicoot 4 that's specific to the PlayStation.
Love it. Also, shout out to the old, was it PS1 or PS2 game we used to play all the time, Crash Team Racing.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's still there's a version of it.
Yeah, there's a new one. I almost bought it, but it was too pricey. It was too pricey for me to not have, we used to have the multi-tap on lock.
Oh, yeah.
The kids in the neighborhood, we go post up in the basement, plug in 4 controllers, and throw down. Crash Team Racing, underrated. All right, you know how we like to finish each episode? Let's drop that too much sense for you. All right, my too much sense for this episode is, fam, be there to listen. I talk about checking on your people all the time. It's very important. But when someone opens up to you, your first job is to listen. And it might end up being your only job in that particular moment. Find positivity and pride in being a listener for someone. It's not always important to impart our opinion on a situation, but we can't always just be there for someone. Like I said, it may be all they need in that particular moment and for that time being, but it's still very important.
Yeah, love that. Love that.
All right, you #1 podcast listeners, that does it for another edition of the #1 podcast in your headphones, Prem Brulee. Vish, I want to thank you for joining me as always.
Yep, anytime.
Always awesome to have you on here, big bro.
Love it. It's always great microphone therapy. I'm not going to lie, and it's always great seeing you and being able to do this live. It's kind of cool, so I love it, and thanks for doing it, and thanks for having me, and I love you, little bro.
Too. All right, you #1 podcast listeners, you know the drill. There's fresh gear now even to incentivize you. Show love to the #1 podcast in your headphones. Share, like, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and then get at me if you do. You might find yourself with some fresh new gear on your head to match your #1 podcast listening headphones. You have a #1 podcast wearing hat to go along with it. And that'll do it for my big bro Vish. I've been Premal Bot. Prem Brulee. We'll talk to you next time.
Peace.